Hello friends! This video is part 1 of a 2-part tutorial on how to loom knit this striped sweater. It's knit side to side and it has a boxy shape and drop shoulders. And the sleeves have some shaping that I'm going to walk you through. Part 1 will be about the front and the back of the sweater, and then we'll seam those two pieces together. Then in part 2, we'll work on the sleeves and we'll finish up the seaming. Thank you so much for watching Ms. Yarn. I really appreciate it when you like and comment on my videos. This project is for intermediate loom knitters, and I'm making the following assumptions. You are comfortable with the double E-wrap cast on, with the E-wrap knit stitch, with the U-knit stitch, and the purl stitch. And you're also at ease with the purl bind off and with joining panels using the loom. I would highly recommend that you watch this baby blanket video and that you practice joining pieces together by making a small swatch. Lastly, in terms of preparation, I'd suggest that you watch my last video to get a behind-the-scenes look at how I designed and made my first version of this sweater. It's called First Ever Loom Knit Sweater. In this video, which is just part 1, we're going to cover Number 1, the first front piece, which is panel A. Number 2, the second front piece, which is panel B. And for step number 3, we'll jump to panel E, since this bottom panel is a little bit special. And number 4 is about completing panels F, G, H, I, and J to make the back. And lastly, number 5, and that's when we seam the front and back together. For the supplies, you'll need a 36 peg loom with a gauge of 3/4 of an inch. You'll need 9 balls of yarn, 5 in white, 2 in light purple, and 2 in light teal. I used Charisma and the weight is a number 5. And you'll need a hook, a pair of scissors, a yarn needle, measuring tape, and loom or stitch markers. To help us make the 5 panels that will make up the front and the 5 panels that will make up the back, let's mark our loom. The peg on the left of the anchor peg is peg 11. The peg on the right of the anchor peg is peg 10. So go ahead and mark pegs 11 and 10 on your loom, and then move towards the right and mark peg 1. Now you're all set. For the double E-wrap cast on, give yourself a tail of about 25 inches or so, and put a slip knot on the anchor peg. This 25-inch tail will be used later when we are seaming the shoulders. Next, you're going to do a double E-wrap cast on from peg 10 to peg 1. Let's knit over on peg 1. And now you've completed your double E-wrap cast on. So let's start row 1 by purling from pegs 1 to 9. For peg 10, we're doing something different. We're going to use an E-wrap knit stitch. This is because we want this edge to be smooth rather than bumpy. Row 1 is now done. Let's take the slip knot off of the anchor peg just to keep it out of the way. So for row 2, we'll be working left to right, and we're going to skip peg 10. That's a slip stitch. So what we'll do is we'll do an E-wrap knit stitch from pegs 9 to 1. So here we are E-wrapping on peg 1, and that finishes off row 2. So now you'll be on your own for quite a bit. You're going to continue alternating purl rows and knit rows to make the garter stitch. Now let's talk about how long your panels should be, because it's very personal. This panel will go across your body horizontally across the front. Now I personally worked for 21 inches to give my sweater a circumference of 42 inches. This is how I came up with that number. I measured a favorite sweater, which was 20 inches across, so the circumference was 40 inches. And I wanted this hand knit sweater to be the same size or a little bit bigger. That's why 21-inch panels worked out for me. So go ahead on your own and keep working until you reach the desired length, and we'll meet again when it's time for the purl bind off. So here we are together again. Panel A is the appropriate length. Let's do the purl bind off. This purl bind off has a slowed down version with more instructions in the Rainbow Baby Blanket video, so that's there if you need it. On peg 10, we will not purl. Instead, we're going to do an E-wrap knit stitch. Then you'll move that loop from 10 to 9. You'll knit over on 9. You should cut your tail now. You only need to leave about 6 to 8 inches. I left about 25 or so because I thought that I would need it for seaming. Let's pull out the tail, and now our purl bind off is done. Panel A is now complete. So to help me keep things straight, I'm putting a stitch marker on the right side of panel A. Now think of the stitches on this panel as being either umbrellas or frowns. Let's pay special attention to the umbrellas. I'm showing you the first umbrella with a cable needle. To start the cast on for panel B, put that umbrella on peg 10. With your panel B color, in my case it's purple, put a slip knot on the anchor peg. Do one E-wrap on peg 10 and then knit over. Continue with a double E-wrap cast on like usual from pegs 9 to 1. Now the cast on for panel B is done. Now for row 1, let's purl our way towards the left. Let's purl on pegs 1 to 10. Before we join the panels, let's have a look at the right side of panel A. Let's identify the next umbrella that we need to put on the loom. Put this umbrella on peg 11. This peg is like a waiting room peg. Now let's move 10 to 11. Then we'll knit over on 11. Then move 11 to 10. And now row 1 is done, and no loops are in the waiting room anymore. Now for row 2, you're going to knit on pegs 9 to 1. And now we've finished row 2 of panel B. On your own, you'll continue the 2-row repeat of the garter stitch while joining panel A to panel B. Let's meet again when it's time to join the last row. Now we're together again, and I am almost at the bind-off edge. Now let me point out the last umbrella of panel A. I hope you can see it under the cable needle. Here I'm just finishing up that last purl row. And now let's join that last umbrella. We're joining in the same way as before. There's nothing special here. And now we're doing our very last knit row. Wrap peg 9 extra tightly. So now the last row of panel B is done. So let's do the purl bind off. So let's purl on peg 10. We'll move the loop to peg 9. We're pulling it tightly, and we are knitting over on peg 9. Now we're going to cut the yarn. And now let's pull out the tail. Let's move the loom out of the way and admire our work so far. Panel A and panel B have now been fully joined. It's looking fantastic. So now at this point, you'll work on your own and complete panels C and D in the same way. Let's meet again when it's time for panel E. Okay, so we've done quite a bit of work on the front part of our sweater. Let's work on panel E together, and we'll cast on in the same way that we did with panels B, C, and D. So here we have finished the double E-wrap cast on. Now row 1 is a little bit different since we want a smooth edge rather than a bumpy edge. So for row 1, let's skip peg 1 and we'll purl on pegs 2 to 10. So the fact that you're skipping peg 1 on row 1 is something different. You're only doing this for panel E. We'll join panel D to panel E in the same way as before. There's nothing special there. Row 2, however, has something different for panel E. Let's E-wrap on pegs 9 to 2. And on peg 1, we're going to do a U-knit stitch. We'll be wrapping peg 1 front to back. So as you can see, peg 1 is being worked differently for both rows 1 and 2, and this will give you a nice edge to your sweater. So you know what to do for the rest of the garter stitch. Let's meet again later when it's time to start the purl bind off. Here we are almost done panel E. We're at the last knit row before the purl bind off. Let's finish the row by doing an E-wrap on peg 3 and then peg 2, and then a U-knit stitch on peg 1. Now it's time for the purl bind off. Skip peg 1 and purl peg 2. Move the loop from peg 2 to peg 1. Knit over on 1 and then move it to peg 2. Now the rest of the purl bind off for panel E is the same as the purl bind off for the other panels. So I'll let you finish up panel E on your own, and that will be the front piece of your sweater. And go ahead and weave in the ends on your own. If you need help, check out the Rainbow Baby Blanket video for that. Let's meet when you're done. At this point, we've finished the whole front of our sweater, and we've woven in our ends as well, and it's looking great so far. So making the back part is pretty straightforward because panels F, G, H, I, and J are just like panels A, B, C, D, and E. So go ahead and make the entire back piece on your own, and let's meet again when that's complete. We have now completed the front and back pieces. They are like two big striped squares. Let's put the two pieces together with the right sides facing up, and let's join them with stitch markers. I'm going to sew 5-inch seams on each side, and I'm going to leave a neckline of 11 inches. I've repositioned the pieces so it's easier to sew. Now let's thread our needle and use the tail for seaming. Go under the top strand of the letter V on the right, then go under the top strand of the letter V on the left. Repeat by going under one strand on the right and then one strand on the left. Keep working for 5 inches and undo the stitch markers as you move along. And don't be too loose so that the seam isn't too holy. Also, feel free to try another seaming method if you prefer. I'm pretty new at sewing clothes together, and this is what's working personally for me. You can also do your own thing when it comes to the width of your neckline. I chose an 11-inch neckline, but yours might be different. Now I'm at 5 inches and I don't want to sew any further. I'm pulling on the yarn to make sure it's tight enough, and I think the seam looks pretty good. I'm going to bring the yarn to the wrong side of the fabric now. Next, I'm going to tie a knot. That will give me some peace of mind. Some people don't like knots on the insides of their clothes, but personally, I don't mind them, especially since I'm a beginner at clothes. Next, since I have a lot of yarn left, I'm going to strengthen the seam by working my way through this ridge. I'm just going under one strand from each piece. Now I'll just tie a knot and I'll weave in that tail later. I have finished my 5-inch seam on one side. And now you have what you need to do the other seam all by yourself. So I'll let you do that on your own. The shoulder seams are the last steps covered by this video, which is part 1. Please check out part 2 for the tutorial on how to knit the sleeves and how to finish up the rest of the seaming. Thanks so much for watching Ms. Yarn.